Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences.
Get on with it.
Right, let's take a look at Empress 4. If you've been watching my channel, you know that I've got a thing for Empress 4 games. Not saying that every single Empress 4 game is like a 10 out of 10 amazingness, you know, I mean, you can't have every game from them be a Hanamakuji, for example, but one thing I like about these games is that they try something different. They do a lot of unique, interesting things with their games. They pack a lot of game into a small box, and they're just cool, quirky, and fun. Like, there's none of these that I can think of where I go, that game was bad. That game was garbage and horrible. No, they're all pretty decent games. They always at least get like a 7 out of 10 from me. And so, you know, when they release new stuff, I'm always intrigued to try them out, even if I know I'm not likely to get another Hanamakuji. You know, Hanamakuji and Geisha's Road are just, you know, they're just lightning strike. You know, they are so good. They're such good card games. They're definitely worth it. But not every single game is going to be like that. World Exchanges is part of this little kind of sub-universe they've got, which is kind of like a futuristic-y business type world. I don't know. It's kind of like, it's not quite Netrunner, but it's kind of like just futuristic in a sense. But I don't know, theme schmeme, it doesn't really make any difference with these games, and certainly not for this one. But this is an economic game.
This man is overgasped!
Luke, an economic game, you don't like those. Yeah, but this is an economic game with a twist. What you got here is a dry erase board. Okay, you didn't see that one coming, did you? But basically what happens is each player has a board with a bunch of columns for the different calendar months and a bunch of symbols on them. And it's like, well, okay, what's the point in that then? You've got an influence board, you've got a player power that benefits you, but for the most part, what you're doing in this game is you are buying and selling these city cards here. So I've got things like Bangkok, $100, Dallas, Havana, San Juan, Cairo, Auckland. You know, you're basically buying up cities. They come in different colors because there's a set collection element for points. But what happens is they've all got a sell price or buy-sell price of $200 or say. But then there's also a bit along the bottom for each of the calendar months. And basically, if you were to sell in a particular month of the year, you get the inflated price. It's a bonus. And if you manage to sell in a certain specific month, like a really specific month for the year, then you get a bonus where you can get more icons off your sheet. So it's like, where does this sheet come in? What's this like? What's so good about this? Well, you start off with a bunch of cash, about 1,000 credits, and you're buying and selling these potentially on your turn. But what you do is, with your dry erase board, let's say I start with $500 based on my starting setup, okay? So we do the first month, January basically, and I decide I want to buy San Juan. It cost me $200. Right, well that means I now have $300. Okay, so I draw a line from 500 to 300 on my board to line up with the number 1 column. I've crossed over a green icon here, which means I have a green icon for the purposes of set collection scoring at the end. And that's essentially what the icons on here are for. They score points in different ways or get you little monetary bonuses, and it's based on the scoring criteria. But this is what you're doing. You're drawing a line graph. You're doing exactly what the cover suggests, like you see on all those like Wall Street things, you know, like stock exchange and stuff. That's what you're drawing. And so what you're doing is you're purposely buying and selling, not just for set collection purposes, but also to get your line to cross over the symbols you want. Like, you know, I could get another like influence symbol down here. Well, that'd be cool. But then I've got to spend $300 and be broke for the next round, which means I'm going to have to sell something. But then if I'm willing to sell something now, I could get up here and cross over a bunch of these symbols. And also, if I'm able to sell something for $300, let's have a look. Ooh, 300, yes. If I sell in round 4, you know, let's say this is round 2, all right? Let's say in round 2, I get the inflated price of $300, and because it's red, I get to draw a circle on my board rather than just a dot. Oh, great, so I'm going to sell that for $300. So I draw 300, cross over a blue symbol, and because it was in the correct month, I get to do a big circle, which gives me all the symbols in the quadrant next to it. And that's essentially what you're doing. You're just going boop, 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 across, which is the worst looking line graph you've ever seen. It's probably going to give some OCD people like nightmares. But you'll end up with this at the end. You'll have all your cities and that in front of you, and you'll score based on the criteria for set collection and whether who had the most money, how many stars you crossed over, and your total influence, which is used to power your little sort of player power and ability. But that's essentially the game. That's all it is. Now, it says 20 to 40 minutes on the box. That's a little bit optimistic. You're probably looking at more an hour with this as people get used to it and start thinking, but I do not deny that 2 people could probably get this done in about half an hour, and 45 minutes should be a more accurate time when people are more used to the game. But this is quirky and different, and so people are going to be maybe overthinking it a bit on their first game. But this is a really interesting little game here. I mean, the cardstock is decent quality. The artwork is that sort of neon futuristic-y thing. So it's not like the artwork's fantastic, but it looks colourful. It looks nice on the table. You've got these landmarks of the various cities here done in a neon, almost like Christmas light setup, and it does look really nice and really beautiful. The graphic design is easy to understand, and the rules with this are pretty straightforward, but there's a lot of forward planning, a lot of cool thinkiness with, you know, these cities that are out on the board, and you're like, I don't know, if I get that card now, I could buy 200, sell 400 then. Well, if I buy that one, if I sell it in month 12, I get a packet of cash. Right, well, I better make certain that I've actually got spare capacity, because you can't have too much money. You can't go above 1,000, so there's no point selling high if you're gonna lose the excess. But it might be like, right, and 12, now sell it, boom, boom, get all that extra money. And it's a very rewarding game for good forward planning, and that's going to flummox some people. It's going to cause a little bit of AP among people, and it definitely has caused AP in some players, so you got to be careful who you play this with. But I found this to be a really interesting little semi-filler game. You're talking 45 minutes to an hour to be more exact. I think 20 to 40 minutes is optimistic, except maybe with 2 players. There's no solo mode, unfortunately. I think solo mode could have maybe worked in this in some respect, like a little puzzle game. But honestly, I'm happy enough just for the fact that this is another quirky little game that told me this is an economic game and yet still managed to win me over in the end. Because I almost wanted to shut it down for the fact that it's like, oh god, an economic game, really? And it's like, why, Empress 4, why? But this is a quirky twist on economic games. It's buying and selling, yes, but this line graph thing, I get invested in that. And there's reasons, you've got something to guide you as to whether you want to buy or sell. It's not just arbitrary buying and selling. It's a cool little game. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. This is a great little filler game. I think it's going to appeal to anybody who likes the whole sort of, it's not drawing right, it's not even flipping right. I mean, this is just a means to an end. You're doing your own thing. You're not flipping a card off a deck or anything like that. You're choosing what's there and what you want to do. But I just think it's a cool idea, taking a stock exchange line graph and creating a little game out of this. I mean, this is a very fulfilling little puzzle game, but then the artwork's nice, the quality is good, your player powers can be, you know, basic or a bit more involved. I might argue 1 or 2 are a little bit more interesting than others, or more powerful than others, but that's just me. But yeah, this is just pretty nice little quirky game. So I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Seal of endorsement. It's great. I recommend people give this one a look.
I don't know what it is, but I want to try it.
Well, why don't we stay with Empress 4 for the next game in their lineup? World Splitters. So this is, again, that same sort of futuristic universe. Again, whatever, future business world. It really doesn't make a difference with these. None of these games are designed to be thematic. It's the setting they want to do for their artwork. But World Splitters is, as you can see, a bigger box. But this one does an interesting little thing in terms of utilizing ergonomics, you know, utilizing its space. Essentially, this is a bidding game. It's a bidding area control game. And let me just show you how you set the game up first. So here's a bunch of boards. You can choose one of these boards to use in each game. And here's kind of like your score track with a few like initiative order and stuff like that. Once you've got all the components out of the box, this is essentially how you set the game up. There you go. That's how you set it up. Literally, you put this pad on top of the box to elevate it up, which is quite a nice little concept, actually. I mean, it just sort of brings it more into view and gets the box out of the way. But then also, this has to go on top of the inset of the box. So don't chuck away the cardboard inset in this like you do with other games. But the reason for that is because it's got all these notches in here that you put these little fences in and little banners and stuff in order to say, right, this is mine or this is somebody else's. Nice little way to utilize your space. I've got to give them credit for that. But essentially what this is an area control bidding game. So you have, you know, 4 different areas, you pick one, each one has a slightly different special rule and layout, but apart from that, that's pretty much it. But what players are doing is that they are bidding on these lands. So you've got this very tiny screen that you just hide your money behind. It's flimsy, it's card, whatever, but it's literally just got one purpose and then it's done. But what you have is a bunch of these workers. So these workers, which granted, very good quality. I mean, These are screen printed wooden meeples, you know, so for a game that's barely like 15 to 20 pounds, that's a pretty good deal, honestly, for component wise. But what you're essentially doing is taking part in a bid for the spaces on this map. So with this, you essentially decide, right, I want to bid for, you know, these, I need to put a fence down on the board first. What you're trying to do is, if you remember a game called Android Mainframe that came out, you were trying to make these enclosed areas and you scored points for doing that. This has a similar feel. You're putting these fences down, which, as much as I talk praise about these components, these are a little bit bleh, because these are just a little cardboard like electric fence thing, and when they go in the slots, they're a little bit on the flimsy side. I mean, they go back and forth a lot.
I feel like I'm gonna break this damn thing.
Now, they won't fall out, providing you don't tip the box over, but still, it would be nice if they sort of fit in there a little bit more snug, as opposed to, you know, flimsy back and forth. When you've got a bunch of these fences everywhere, it does look like a very poorly constructed, like, storage yard. But, well, I digress. But essentially what you'll do is that you'll put a fence down, and then you will bid for one of the two spaces next to it. And so what players are doing is that they have a bunch of cash, they'll bid so much, you know, and it's done by closed fist bidding, which is the way I think it's probably my favorite way to bid. So it's not, I go 2, you go 3, you go 4. It's more like, right, I could really use that space there, because if I do, then I'm in this big area, I could score more, because it's all based on essentially majority of people that you have in the area. So the more people that you've got there, the better. But obviously, the bigger the area, the better in terms of points. And you're kind of like, you know what, I'm going to bid 3, so okay, ready, go. And highest will get a space, second player will get like the next space to it, and so it's basically a bunch of those throughout the game. You'll put the fences down, different little icons here will either shift you up an initiative track for tiebreakers, or they'll put you more fences out, or the green ones are a special rule for the map. So you've got 4 different maps with interesting little layouts, and to be fair, that's good variety to give you 4 different like map setups, and all you do is just basically choose which board you want and slot it in. Quite nice. But it's a decent, well-produced game. I mean, I do like yeah, those fences are a little bit on the flimsy side, but I like the fact that it's utilizing the boxes for, you know, the thing, because this being elevated makes it a bit easier for people to see across the table. But I love the fact you've got these wooden screen printed meeples, and you've got quite a few of them. You know, the screen printed like initiative marker and stuff like that. And it's, for a game that's barely 15 to 20 pounds, that's not bad. You know, I expected much more chintzier quality like tokens for something like this, but they pulled out the stops on that. But the gameplay itself is fine. The graphic design takes a little bit of getting used to. It's got everything written down as to your, like, you know, on here it tells you how to do your turn. It tells you the different things you score for at the end. It's got a score track that you keep having to refresh as you keep going past every multiple of 20. And you've got the initiative track up here, which basically, you know, is dictating, right, well, if I put in the same bid as someone else, I'm higher than them because I'm pink, I get to break the tie. You know, nice, simple initiative marker. But it is. And these little bits are basically tiles where you, when you fill in certain like sizes of land, you take the corresponding tile and it's worth extra points, that kind of thing. But it's a neat little bidding game. Now, it takes a little bit to get people used to the idea of what they're doing in terms of what they're bidding, how much should they bid, how the turn sequence works, the different ways to get points, etc. It's not the easiest game to grok, not compared to some of the other games in this line. But it's not a difficult game per se. In fact, it looks more daunting than it actually is when you sort of get the rulebook out and go, oh, there's a fair bit to read in here. But it's like, oh wait, no, there's only really setup, a couple of pages there, page and endgame scoring, a 2-player variant, which is fine, but honestly, I feel like with a game like this, you don't really want to play it with 2. I will digress, I've not played this with 2, but bearing in mind there is a page variant for 2 players, which basically, you know, has slight changes to the rules. Would you really play a bidding game with 2 players though? I probably wouldn't. This is much better for the, you know, 3, 4 and potentially 5 player count that this is asking for, and it works fine at 5 players. I mean, it might take a little, well, no, it doesn't even take that much longer, because at the end of the day, everybody's simultaneous close fist bidding. So I didn't find that a 5-player game took much longer than a 3-player game, but it's obviously more tense for the map. And that's probably where this game shines, with more players, because with less players, the map size doesn't change. So you're getting a bunch of your meeples like on the board and that, but again, there's only so much contesting. Whereas if you've got 5 of you on there, it becomes vicious. Absolute vicious going for these spaces. And that's kind of what an area control game should be. Relatively vicious and like, all right, I'm going to get that space. Oh, you know, but you know who threatens you going in. Like, somebody's not going to bid on a space for a block of land that they're not likely to score anything for. So they probably won't have to fear a bid from them. But if you know that your rival over there has like got some in there, it's like, how much money did you have? Have you got a lot of money behind your screen? I don't know. But to make certain I put a lot here, because you don't see each other's money. It's not public information. Money is the one thing that's hidden behind these screens. And again, that keeps a bit of tension, because it means I can't just look at you and go, I got more money than you. Fine, I'll win this bid. No, you've got to kind of use your memory cells a little bit, but not to a crazy extent. It's just so that you don't have perfect information. And it's one that I'd be like, you know what? I'd play every now and again. But I don't think it's amazing. I don't think this is like great levels of play. I think it's good, does what it says on the tin, it's well produced and very cost effective. I'd give it a 7 out of 10 overall. It's good, not great. I was also in an RA maybe a 6, but I think with the variety in the box, with the simplicity of the setup, I mean, this is literally your table space. Ignore the bits that I've littered around here. Here's your screen, there's the 2 boxes, that's the table presence. You can play this on a very small table, so you gotta give props for that. It's very cheap, yet well produced for the cheap price. Again, that's something to be proud of and give props for. So I think giving this a 6 would have been a bit harsh when I do enjoy the gameplay and think that it does a good job of an area control bidding game. But again, 7 out of 10 if you're playing this with 4 or 5 players. I think when you play this with 2 or 3, you're heading more into the 6 out of 10 category. I don't think this suits 2 and 3 as well as 4 and 5. But yeah, World Splitters, interesting. This is so going to fly under the radar for a lot of people, but if this is your style of game, I recommend just giving it a look. You know, much like a lot of Empress 4 stuff, give this one a try.
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
So 3 more. Let's go for the biggest one out of this lot. Vengeance, Roll, and Fight. Episode 1, but whatever. Episode 1 and 2 are the exact same game, they just have different maps. But there was a game that came out called Vengeance from Mighty Boards, and this is the same people, Mighty Boards. But Vengeance was an interesting game. It was basically Kill Bill, the miniatures game. You were wronged, and your guy went into this map with a bunch of goons and minions and a boss, and you basically had to fight your way through, getting damaged and rolling dice and doing this cool little dice puzzle.
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
It was a fun game, but man was it overwrought. I mean, it was a typical Kickstarter thing. Like, here's a bunch of miniatures, here's a ton of stuff, here's a setup that takes like 2 hours to do or something. It was a bit overwrought. And most of what you were doing with these miniatures was plonking them down and then taking them off. That was it. You didn't really do much else with them. So it was a good game with too much bloat, like way too much bloat. This is the roll and write version of it though, so still a big box, but that's because you do get a decent amount in this box. I mean, here's your rule book, which again doesn't have that much in there, but you've then got a lot of dry erase boards here. Everybody's got their own sort of a training and health board where they put their abilities and such, so we've got 4 of them, but then you've also got a good collection of maps that are all double-sided, so you've got 10 different maps in here. Now granted, the different maps aren't a massive change. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going from location to location and killing off minions, but you know, I like the idea that they have got this variety. They match what you kind of see in movies, from the snooker club to the warehouse to the nightclub, that kind of thing. And you know, it's good that it gives you this level of variety. But what you're essentially doing in this one is much like you did in the original. You've been wronged, you've got to go into this area, kill a bunch of minions, kill the boss, get points. But it's all done with the way of that dice puzzle in a big fashion, because you now have a smorgasbord of dice here. Ha! If you like chucking dice, you're in for a treat, because there's a lot of it here, a lot of dice. But essentially what you have is that you can only have up to 4 dice that you're rolling at any particular time, and they've all got symbols like dash and fight, and you know, and blood for getting hit. And essentially what you're doing is trying to match up these dice with the abilities on your board. So, you know, punch requires me to get 3 knives, okay? Well, I got 2. Oh, that's a blood, can't re-roll that. That's a gun, don't need that. That's a dash. There's 2 knives. This is how bad my dice luck is, alright? But I've got 3 there, so great. I can allocate them to this ability. I punch, which allows me to kill off a minion. You know, that kind of thing. And so, but then you've only got 4 dice, so what's the point of all these other dice? Well, they're in a giant pool in the middle of the table that everybody can access. So essentially, once you're done rolling your dice for whatever reasons you are, and they've been allocated and such, you need more dice. I was like, well, all right. I grab them from the pool, and then I keep rolling, roll, 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 allocate, good, good, good. Right, I need more dice, need more dice, need more dice. And you see where this is going. You have multiple players clawing at this pool of dice. So it kind of works as a timer mechanic, but it's a variable timer mechanic because it's based on what everybody else are doing. Now, you don't have any player interaction in this game beyond that, and that is a bit of a... It's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing, because I would have liked maybe some player interaction, because the other game didn't really have that either, but here, you have no player interaction. It's literally, I'm doing what I like on my board, I'm doing what I like on my board, what you do on your board means sod all to me. Like, absolute nothing to me. The only reason you're there is to mitigate how quickly these dice go. And so that does mean that you can effectively play this with 2, 3, and 4 players without too much trouble or too much extra time, really, because at the end of the day, the round will go on as long as the dice are there. The theme is still well represented, and it is, you know, cool to be crossing off and going, right, I'm going to go into there, I'm going to shoot this guy, I'm going to punch this dude, and then dash right by here, charge, grab that loot, and punch this guy, and stab him, and chop his head off, and, you know, I mean, the abilities aren't quite as lucrative at that, but like I say, this is kind of the feeling you're getting. Now, there is something you kind of need to know going into this, though. Firstly, bear in mind this is a semi-timed mechanic. I'll get onto solo mode in a minute, but this is a semi-timed mechanic. This means that any player who is good at this type of game, or has memorized the rules and abilities to this game, like to muscle memory, and is quicker off the mark to process symbology on dice than other players, will win this game flat out every single time.
I must break you.
This is a game that does not favor anybody who isn't a fan of timed games, and I gotta admit, I'm not the biggest fan of timed games. I love XCOM, but XCOM did it right. XCOM's the one that does a time phase right, in my opinion. Most other games that try to throw in a time phase, pendulum, you know, get it wrong and fall flat on their face hard. This one is semi-timed, but still, when I'm rolling these dice, I can't instantly go, I have 2 of these and 1 of these. That instantly means I can do this ability and this ability. Right, I'm going to put that there, and go, right. It's like, no, I'm not the Micro Machines guy, okay? I can't process this at hyperspeed.
Each one has dramatic details, terrific trim, precision paint jobs, plus incredible micro machine pocket play sets. There's a police station, fire station, restaurant.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
And so you'll find yourself like looking at the dice and trying to like, oh right, so that does that, that does that. Well, hang on, how does fire work again? You know, oh, fire works like that. Okay, right. How does charge work? Oh, so I move and hit. Right, okay, so now I get it. And the problem is that if you've played this game enough to the point where you've memorized a lot of this stuff will be a lot quicker. But this game has a learning curve, a big learning curve. And so this game doesn't really suit casual play. Because if you're just playing with, you know, if you're used to this game and you play with 3 complete new people, you will win. Hands down. There is no way they can beat you. At all. Because they will have to add the processing time of the abilities and what they're doing on the map. You won't. And that is a put-off, because it means that in my situation where I'm trying to introduce this to people at my games club and that, I can't really bring this out, because I'm just going to wipe the floor with everyone I play. That's not fun. It's not fun for them, and I don't know, it's just a bit of a downer. Now, I like the variety of the abilities you can get. I like the fact your character has a unique disadvantage and unique abilities to them. I like the fact that you can choose before you start the timed phase to roll these white dice and go, right, well, based on those, I can increase my health, I can train up some experience, although the experience track goes up a long way, but you only get 3 of these white dice. There's only 4 rounds. You really don't get to do a huge amount of upgrading in this game. It's not like I can have 3 items and a ton of health and a ton of training. No, you're either doing a very tiny bit of everything, or you're focusing hard on one thing. I would have liked maybe just a few more elements to train up, but it does keep the game fresh each time, I would admit. It means that you can try different strategies, and even with the same character, you can decide, you know what, with this character I'm going to go heavy on training and get these abilities. You know what, next time I'm just going to grab all their items. This time I'm going to make them a tank. You know, there's different ways to play each character, and I do like that for a sense of variety, but very steep learning curve. Now, solo mode, this becomes even more of a problem, because solo mode is entirely timed. Oh dear. The game has easy, medium, and hard. I'd like to rename these satanic, unbelievably hellish and gory and gross, and nightmare level on Doom, you know, like difficulty ratings, I think, because they are stupidly hard. The idea is that you play for the game as normal, level up and do all that. That's cool. You have a certain amount of dice in the pool based on your difficulty rating. That's cool. I'd rather have less dice than more, frankly. But then you have to do it fully timed. Get your smartphone out, get a timer, and easy is 45 seconds. I've yet to actually have a timed phase in the multiplayer game that goes as low as 45 seconds. People are processing dice, they're taking dice and doing things. No multiplayer game has ever had a 45-second timer, and that is easy mode. You can go as low as 25 seconds or something in hard mode. That's obscene. When I'm playing this in solo mode, I roll the dice. I do not instantly, like a mega computer, process symbology, ability, blah, 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 and go. I can't. I have to process the dice. Now, you might argue, well, that's not a fault of the game, that's a fault of me. Maybe. I'm not perfect. I'm not a Mensa student. But, you know, come on. A lot of people are still going to need to learn these abilities off by heart and commit them to muscle memory. And so 45 seconds, I barely get anything done. I've like crossed off, right, I've gone to here, I've killed a couple of guys, and I might have moved to here. Well, that was it, you know. And by the time I've even worked out what I'm doing, 45 seconds are already up. 25 just seems ridiculous. Just give us a chance, you son of a. So what I tried to do was I tried to play without the timer. I tried to originally just do a 2-minute timer, or I just took out the timer entirely and just said, you know what, we'll reduce the amount of dice I have in the pool so it's more restrictive, but when I roll the dice, I have time to think about what I'm doing. And I decide what I want to do, blah, blah, blah. I enjoyed the game more when I did that. Either put a longer timer on, or just take out the timer entirely. I found it a more interesting little dice puzzle game with a nice cool theme when you took out that stressful element. I think the game just fails as a timed game. I don't like it as a timed game. I like it as a cool dice puzzle game with a theme, even though the theme is kind of stretched. That's the problem. And if you like time games and you think the time thing is amazing, then you're going to love this game. But for me, I was just like, put off. Especially when pretty much your sole reason you'll do well, other than your ability to microprocess all these abilities, is the blood symbol on the die. When you roll the blood symbols, you can't re-roll these dice. And so at some point you have to decide, right, I need to actually take damage. You basically get to put one of these on your health track, re-roll the rest, which could come up as blood again, and then carry on from there. You only have 3 health in this game. You could get up to 6, but you generally only have 3 health. And every time you fall out, you basically have to lose a die permanently from your pool, but then you can easily get killed off. Your ability to do well in this game is highly dictated by your ability to not roll these, especially when you're playing the 45-second timer mode. If I've got to waste time having to decide, right, I'm going to heal and do all this stuff, that's like a good 5-10 seconds out of my turn that I'm not doing anything else apart from healing and damaging. That's annoying, and my dice luck sucks, okay? My dice luck sucks. I can happily roll 4 dice and get either the symbols I don't want, or I can happily roll 4 blood symbols. It's happened, I can do it. It's totally doable. Even though there's only 1 blood symbol on each die, I can easily roll these blood symbols. And so I can find myself that I'm already practically half dead within like the first couple of timed bits, just because, wow, I'm like, you know, I literally can't stop rolling blood. It's no fault of mine, I'm just rolling them. You know, if somebody else gets lucky and doesn't roll blood, they will do infinitely better than someone who doesn't. And there's no real balancing mechanic of that. It's just entirely luck. So that is a bit of an off-put as well. So I like what this game is going for, and I like the theming, I like the variety, 10 maps, I like the fact that this can be played multiplayer in the same amount of time as it probably would take to play 2, 3, 4 player, you know, that range. But I think this game works better as a multiplayer than it does as solo, unless you're willing to take out the timer, in which case I like solo mode better. But multiplayer game, at least that timer is variable, and everybody is hopefully on the similar wavelength, so, you know, as long as you're not a complete expert at the game, you'll be rolling and trying to process everything, but so will they. So people will roll and they'll go, right, I'll do this, 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 and this. It won't instantly be like, I've rolled and I've instantly grabbed half the pool because I'm so much faster than you. It's one of those things, but I don't know, this isn't a game that won me over, really. I get what it's trying to do, and I get that this is a game I respect more than I like. It does the job that it sets out to do well. It's definitely one for time game fans. I'm not one of them. But for me, this one hits a 5 out of 10 for me. It's average. If I take out the timer, I could bump it up to a 6. But for the most part, I'm like, yeah, this is cool, but that steep learning curve and the timer aspect, I think just really, really hurts the experience. Despite the fact that it's produced well. It's got a lot of boards, it's got some interesting layouts in that. I could go to a 6 perhaps, but I don't know if I could easily get to a 7 out of 10 for this one. It does what it sets out to do, but I just think the timer is a bad thing for the solo mode. And I just think that learning curve is just going to make the game not as fun for casual players if one person knows this game inside and out. And there's going to be somebody who's like that, unless it's something you bring out really randomly, you know, like, so even you're not an expert on it. Or if you're lucky enough to have the same group of 4 people who understand this game like, you know, like clear as honey, then great. But how often do you have that set up? I don't know. It's a 5 out of 10 for me overall. It does what it sets out to do, and it could be a hit for some people, and I know it already is. But for me, it was kind of a bit of a dud.